we put way more on our plate than we have capacity for. If you can't see what you've committed to, it's so easy to say, oh yeah, of course I've got time for another project. And I think one of the biggest reasons that this happens to people is I think they forget to put maintenance in their calendar and in their schedule. Like we don't really think about how much maintenance work we really have, even things like doing a weekly review or just recurring tasks. And I think recurring maintenance work actually takes up way more time than most people think it does, or they just sort of forget that it's there. So we're still doing it anyway. We're still making food every day. We're still doing the workout. We're doing these things, or we're trying to anyway, but we haven't really factored them into our time. So when you think about, oh, that project, it's just this little container, I can just slot that in. We kind of forget what's already in there because often we don't put it in our calendar because they're just, oh yeah, they're just things that I do, they're habits, but we forget that that stuff actually takes up time. And so I think there's that eyes are bigger, eyes are bigger than our calendar. We just put way more on our plate than we're able to do. So we overcommit and then we let people down and then we get into that burnout cycle. So I see that a lot. I was definitely that person too, committing to way too many clients. And then it's like, which client is bugging you first? And you're like, everything kind of feels like it's on fire. So getting out of that, reactive mode into something a bit more proactive. And that can take years sometimes. Like I've definitely been in positions where, especially if you're committing to projects that are 3 months or 6 months or something like that, and then you have multiple projects that are dragging on, or even just again your client is dragging on with something and you're trying to fill the gap. So it can be really easy, I think, to overdo it. So I think people are not even pricing their projects and services to factor those things in, and so we get desperate, we take on more work, and it just kind of creates that cycle. Yeah.
I hear this so much when we talk to people about time blocking, and people who say, I've tried time blocking, it doesn't work for me. And it's not going to work for everyone, obviously. But one of the most common things I hear is, I time blocked all my projects. I blocked every minute of the day, but it's with that work time, not necessarily those maintenance moments, as you call them. And I think that time when we don't calculate for it, then immediately you start to fall behind on everything. At least that's my experience. And so I see this with so many people who say, I conceptually like the idea of time blocking, but I'm always behind on everything. What are some of the maintenance rituals or items that are just recurring tasks? They're in your calendar, they're built in. So they're limiters on what else you can fill your time with.
One thing I'll add is just sort of a tip or maybe a life-changing thing that I've done is actually blocking in buffer time, like putting blocks of time in the calendar that is specifically buffer. It's for all the overflow. And I think people forget to do that, right? We leave absolutely zero margins. We design the calendar to be absolute best case scenario. This is if everything goes exactly as planned. And it never, ever does. Like no week ever goes as planned, right? So I think people forget.
Lightning in a bottle when it happens,
exactly.
Right?
It's those are the exceptions, not the rules. So I think that's one key is I don't always necessarily know, or it's the maintenance that you forget. They're like, oh yeah, I forgot I needed to do that, so let's put that in the buffer. But even things like watering the plants, I put that in there. Payroll, I know that has to happen once a month. Our weekly review at the end of the week, we've got a check-in at the beginning of the week with my husband. So sort of like business related, life related. So I'm just taking a look at my calendar now to see what some of those things are. Creating and publishing a newsletter, right? Ideally, that's something I do weekly. I don't always get to it, but if it's on the calendar, I sort of forget, oh yeah, I have a newsletter and I need to nurture my audience. So marketing activities, any business owner is going to have both the marketing maintenance and business maintenance. Then you've got your life maintenance, the health stuff. Like, are you going to the gym and have you made space for that? Or for me, I'm not very diligent about the gym, but I love sports and team sports. And I think that's such a great way I've got softball, I've got dodgeball, I commit to those, and I'm going to be letting my team down if I'm not showing up for that. So that's one thing that's super important. Weekly meal prep, groceries, errands. Like I think we just sort of forget to put that stuff in there. Renewing like car insurance and house insurance, those sorts of things. Some of those things that maybe aren't automated that might require you to go into an office and that sort of thing. So we forget taxes happen every year, but how much mental space, and if something goes wrong or you need to gather more documentation. So I try as much as possible to add even more buffer than I think I need, because it's always still never quite enough.
you're right. In that list, there are so many large and small tasks that I think we forget about, or so many of us tend to underestimate, and they just creep up and creep.
Absolutely. And I think even just doing, whether it's a daily diary or weekly diary, like a time inventory, I recommend to people to do. Just log what you're doing every day for 2 weeks, even just to notice oh, yeah, I forget that I do that every day. I forget that actually that's like 3 times a week. So even if people have really irregular schedules, there are still ways that you can account for that buffer block. And for some people, it might be needing 15 minutes every day of the week. For some people, it might be like, I want 3 hours every Friday morning to catch up on the weekly item. Like it's going to be different for everyone, but I think it's just got to be in your schedule. It's the no way I could account for this time block that goes into that.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the things that I try to do personally is have a win the day task. So every day has like the one most important task that at some point needs to get done. And then I sort of have admin and deep work. Those are the general pockets of kind of how I think about things. So off the top of my head, I'm looking at my calendar. I would love to have my win the day task like pinned at the top of every day of the week. Of course, now I'm thinking about it from a Notion perspective. Okay, do I have to have this property and sort of like how does that work from a logistical standpoint? But it'd be cool maybe to frame the win the day being like sort of pinned, and it's not necessarily scheduled. It's like top of the this is what you got to get done today. I just need an easy way to know like what's the most important task of the day, and really I just schedule only like one or two things per day as my like that's got to get done. Everything else is pretty flexible for me. So if that helps give some context, like I don't fill every single slot in the calendar with stuff to do. It's like just the key important pieces.
I haven't heard that your win the day task. And I love that idea because I think it's so easy to look at each day with, okay, here are the 5 things I need to get done, the 3 things, the 10 things. And often it's hard to feel successful at the end of the day if that list isn't complete.
Yeah.
Versus looking at it as like, what is the most critical thing? Nothing else happens today. Like, what's the one thing that's going to move the needle for me? And having that mentality around that is the task, that everything else
is bonus. It's gravy.
Yeah. Love that framing. That's very motivating.